Joining us now, NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin, NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, and the Bulwark senior reporter Will Sommer. All right, so Julie, how much pressure is there on Republicans right now?
Well, there is an immense amount of pressure, not only because they kept hearing from constituents back home, who certainly members of their base, contrary to what the president said is a Democrat hoax. Republicans want to know this information, too, because as we've covered extensively, this was a box that was reopened, a can of worms that was reopened by the Trump campaign itself leading up to this last election. And so this is an issue that is not going away on Capitol Hill anytime soon. You'll forgive me in advance as I'm looking over my shoulder, just in case the speaker strolls by me, as the House just started voting here a couple of minutes ago. But what he told my colleague Kyle Stewart literally minutes before I came to talk to you, Katie, is he once again praised the victims and survivors for coming forward. He said it is not an easy thing to do, but he also, as he's been saying consistently, criticized the discharge petition itself, saying there are not adequate protections for victims who do not wish to be identified. Johnson saying 10 spoke out today and did so bravely, but there are 1,000, in his words, that might not want to be identified. Even though Massie and Khanna have numerously told me, they've said publicly, that there are protections crafted in their discharge petition to prevent any of these victims' names from coming out who do not wish to be identified. Critically, Katie, what I did hear from this press conference this morning is that these women, these survivors, they're done waiting. They don't trust the government. They don't think there will be transparency at the end of this, though they are hoping that at least 2 Republicans join those other 4 who have signed on to this petition in forcing the administration's hand here. They said that they are getting together to put together their own list. One of them, Lisa Phillips, said, we know the names. We know who did this to us. And they said confidentially they're going to put together this list, although unclear if they're going to release it to the public. But ultimately, they said this isn't our job. It's on the DOJ and on Congress.
So there is this argument from Donald Trump, even from people on the right. Donald Trump's calling it a hoax, but he's also saying, Tom, that DOJ is releasing information, giving it to the House. They did that interview with Maxwell. Is this information that is new?
No, most of it is our court filings that we've reviewed several times, if not dozens of times. There's the files that were provided by public information request from the Palm Beach County State's Attorney's Office in Florida. So that information has been out there. Those were the original investigative files, along with the Palm Beach Police Department. So those are contained within there. It's all the public filings in the Maxwell case, which are voluminous. And there are a number of filings from the Epstein case as well. A lot of those things, members of Congress talked about redactions today. By the way, those redactions are court ordered, so that's nothing that Congress is going to get around. That's a judicial branch function. So the challenge here going forward is the limited new information that we have are redacted documents that show flights and trips that Jeffrey Epstein took with a number of other individuals leading up to 2019. That includes international travel, because that would have obviously involved Customs and Border Protection. But the names of those on the flights, not just the pilot or the captain, members of the crew, those are redacted, but additional males and females, those names are redacted as well. So there's nothing on there that provides any new information as far as who Epstein was traveling with. People got initially excited because there was some financial information that was all made public as part of the Epstein bail application when he was first arrested. So really, there's not much more that's there. For the Justice Department to turn over more information would really start to cross some red lines for them, because in the past, they've been reticent to provide case files to Congress. They're incomplete. FBI 302s are summaries of an interview. I mean, you and I could write up a one-page summary of this show, but we wouldn't capture all the nuance, all the detail, and everything that went into it. And that's what those documents are. There's other documents in there that name, there could be a sheet that says we got a tip call saying that Katie Tur and Tom Winter are involved in a public corruption scheme in New York City. That doesn't mean it's true. It just means that they got a tip call. But can you imagine how the internet in 2025, September, would react to somebody who would get a tip on that?
This is why you don't play with conspiracy theories.
It does. And so to back it up to the reason why we're talking about this today, the victims on Capitol Hill, the emotion there was so raw still. And they talked about on several occasions, every single time this comes up in the news, all of these stories that have no basis in truth. Every time they hear it on the radio or listen to a podcast on the way to drop their kids off at school, it's what parents are talking about at schools as they're dropping off their kids. They cannot get out of this, even if they want to, because they're inundated with story after story after story. And then today, the internet erupted again. There is a list. The victims are talking about a list. No, what the victims are talking about is a list of individuals potentially who they think could have known about this activity that was occurring, or that could have been involved in Epstein's world in facilitating this for Epstein. There's also another subset of that where, according to one of the plaintiff's attorneys, Brad Edwards, there are some women that once they turned of age, over the age of 18, that they then were either sexually contacted, abused, or were given to on behalf of Epstein, which is kind of a perverted phrase, but given to these wealthy men that were friends of Epstein. That's a separate group, and presumably a much smaller one based on our reporting. So all of this is now out there, and the victims are now part of what has become a broad kind of a conspiracy talk about this case.
One of the knots is that it's hard for people to believe, certainly hard for those survivors to believe, that this was something that was just being perpetrated and planned by two people. It was just Ghislaine Maxwell, and it was just Jeffrey Epstein. Just the two of them were able to inflict this much damage on so many women for so long. Mm-hmm. That's what's making this hard to understand for a lot of folks. If that's they just can't believe that is the case, and they believe they're going to find more information in some files that are locked away in a closet at DOJ.
Right, and I think that it's important to go back to our reporting, which is separate and apart from what the DOJ and FBI put out in an unsigned, undated memo earlier this summer, which is that if there's not even enough information to open a case on an uncharged third party at this point. I think some of the women victims are speaking about those who work for Jeffrey Epstein at a point. How could they not know based on the fact that I'm a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, and I'm being requested and scheduled to go to Jeffrey Epstein's apartment? Like, isn't that weird? Wouldn't that stick out to somebody? Shouldn't somebody have said something? Aren't there enough people that know about it? To that end, on the victims' front, some of that has come out in testimony at trial. Some of it didn't, because obviously it has to be tailored towards the person who's charged, in that case, Ghislaine Maxwell. Could there be more information in these files on that? It appears so, for certain. So, yes, there are some additional avenues. Certainly the idea of the FinCEN, in the SARs that were generated by Epstein, some of the questions that Congress has previously raised about that. I'd love to get access to those. Those would be the types of things.
There's also the sweetheart deal that Epstein got.
So there's this almost 400-page report by the Office of Professional Responsibility for the Department of Justice, which is kind of like the internal affairs of DOJ and prosecutors. They talked to Alex Acosta, who was, of course, the former Trump labor secretary, the U.S. attorney in Florida at the time. They talked to all the prosecutors that were involved. They reviewed their emails. They reviewed their schedules. And they issued a detailed report, which we've done our own reporting on and have put out there. So that information is there. Ultimately, unless somebody comes forward and says there was a quid pro quo deal here, there was some transaction that took place that we don't know about, the phone lines are open for that. If that's the case, I think that's something that needs to be looked into. But so far, investigators that have looked at it haven't seen any evidence of that to date.
All right. So, Will, Tom and I just went through a lot of the knottier parts of this. I wonder, there was so much buzz about Epstein just a few months ago before the summer recess. I know Speaker Johnson, certainly, the White House might have hoped that the summer would cool things off. Get this story to die down. Donald Trump has certainly done a lot since then to if not overtly distract, then to distract from the Epstein files. Has it done so? What's the word on the MAGA street?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can see here how much narrative power Donald Trump has over his base and the right-wing media. As you said, when the DOJ initially closed this case this summer, there was a lot of outrage on the right saying, we want to find out what's in the files. But I think as it's become clear that perhaps there's something embarrassing about Trump in the files, or that just basically that he doesn't want it to get out, he's calling it a hoax, we're seeing a lot more of a blackout in right-wing media. Fox News barely mentioned it last night in prime time. Although at the same time, online, I'm seeing a lot still demand from the grassroots to see these files. I think the question of where this story goes for the right really depends on whether Thomas Massie can get enough Republicans to join him in this vote, or whether they're just going to go with Donald Trump's claims that it's a hoax.
That is a very good point. There's polling out there that suggests that the public broadly does not trust the president on this. I'll put it up on the screen. So 67% disapprove of Trump's handling of the Epstein files. 73% disapprove or say the DOJ has not been transparent. This is Quinnipiac poll. It's a pretty well-respected polling company. Those numbers are high, Will.
Yeah, I think no matter what happens here, whether this, obviously Republicans want to make this look like this is some Democratic witch hunt. I think whatever happens here in terms of how hardcore Trump supporters view it, I think this is something that still affects independent voters, that affects maybe lean Republican voters. It's a lot to swallow. I mean, and I think it kind of depresses some Republicans as well. This is something they were told was a really, really big deal, and suddenly they're being told, get over it. And so that's something that maybe makes them have more doubts about Trump.